I am sitting at a canal-side cafe in Amsterdam, sipping a latte as if my life is finally still. Then my phone vibrates. My sister screams that the police are arriving because a stranger is in my house. The catch is that house is no longer mine since I sold it 2 weeks ago. By handing her my keys, my parents just ignited a fire that will consume us all. My name is Lillian Moore, and for the first time in 34 years, I felt entirely weightless. The air in Amsterdam was crisp, carrying the scent of damp cobblestones and brewing espresso. I sat at a small, wobbly iron table outside a cafe overlooking the Herengracht Canal, watching the water ripple under the gray afternoon sky. It was 5 in the afternoon here, and I had just finished my final onboarding session with the European partner of Marrow Peak Analytics. The transition was done. The paperwork was signed. I was no longer the Lillian who fixed everything for everyone in Ohio or Tennessee. I was just Lillian, a woman with a latte, a heavy coat, and a secret that spanned 4,000 miles. I took a sip of the foam, letting the warmth settle in my chest. I watched a cyclist rattle past, her scarf trailing in the wind, looking unbothered and free. That was going to be me. I had curated this moment for months, planning every detail to ensure that when I finally sat in this chair, I would owe nothing to anyone. Then my phone buzzed against the metal table. The sound was aggressive, a harsh vibration that rattled the spoon against the saucer. I looked down. The screen lit up with a FaceTime request. Paige. My stomach did not drop. That was the old reaction. Instead, a cold, hard knot formed at the base of my throat. It was 10 in the morning in Nashville. Paige should have been at her receptionist job, or sleeping in, or doing whatever it was my sister did when she was not manufacturing a crisis. I debated ignoring it. I could have just let it ring out, finished my coffee, and pretended the Atlantic Ocean was a soundproof wall, but the buzzing persisted, angry and demanding. I knew that if I did not answer, she would call Mom, and then Mom would call the police to report me missing, and then my carefully constructed peace would be shattered by an international wellness check. I swiped the green button and propped the phone against the sugar dispenser. Paige's face filled the screen, pixelated and chaotic. She was not at work. She was crying. Her mascara smeared in jagged lines down her cheeks, her blonde hair sticking to her forehead with sweat. The camera shook violently, as if she were running or pacing in a tight circle. "Lillian!" she screamed. The audio cracked, distortion tearing through the peaceful Amsterdam air. "Lillian, pick up! Oh my God! You have to help me." "I am here. Paige," I said, keeping my voice low. I did not look at the camera. I kept my eyes on a boat drifting lazily down the canal. "What is wrong?" "There is a man!" she shrieked, her voice pitching up so high it hurt my ears. "There is a stranger in the house. He is screaming at me. He says he is calling the cops. You have to talk to him. Tell him to get out." I frowned, finally looking at the screen. The background behind Paige was a blur of beige walls and familiar crown molding. My crown molding. The ones I had spent 3 weekends painting by hand because I wanted to save money on contractors. "Where are you, Paige?" I asked, though I already knew. "I am at your house," she wailed. "Mom and Dad said I could stay here. I just walked in with my boxes, and this psycho came out of the kitchen and started yelling that I'm breaking and entering. He is holding a baseball bat. Lillian, he is going to kill me." She spun the camera around. The image whipped past a stack of cardboard boxes in the hallway, and landed on a man standing in the archway of the living room. It was not a psycho. It was Jordan Hargrove. He looked terrified, clutching a phone to his ear with one hand and, yes, a baseball bat in the other, though he held it like he had never swung one in his life. Behind him, I saw his wife, Elise, frantically typing on her own phone. "Get out!" Jordan was shouting, though his voice sounded tinny through the speaker. "I have the police on the line. Get out of my house." "It is my sister's house," Paige screamed back, flipping the camera to face herself again. She looked at me, eyes wide with the entitlement of someone who has never been told no without a safety net attached. "Lillian, tell him I'm moving in. Tell him Mom gave me the key." Everything slowed down. The cold European breeze felt suddenly freezing. "Mom gave you the key," I repeated. It was not a question. "Yes." "The emergency key," Paige sobbed, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "She said you would not mind. She said I could stay here to save money on rent since you are gone. Just tell him." Lillian. "Fix this." I closed my eyes for a second. The audacity was breathtaking. It was architectural in its structure. My parents had taken the emergency key, the one I had given them strictly for fire or flood, and handed it to my 31-year-old sister, so she could squat in my home while I was out of the country. They did not ask me. They did not warn me. They just assumed that my property was a communal resource, a line item in the family budget that they could allocate as they saw fit. I opened my eyes and looked at the canal again. The water was dark, hiding everything beneath the surface. "Paige," I said. My voice was steady, void of the panic she wanted to mirror. "Put the phone close to your face. I need you to listen to me very clearly." She sniffled, bringing the screen closer. "What? Just tell him to leave." "I cannot tell him to leave, Paige," I said, "because it is his house." Paige stopped crying instantly. She blinked, her mouth hanging open slightly. "What? I sold the house?" I said. The words hung in the air between continents. I watched the realization try to land on her face, but it slid off, rejected by a lifetime of insulation. "What are you talking about?" she scoffed, a nervous laugh bubbling up. "No, you didn't. You just left for the trip. Mom said—" "I sold the house 2 weeks ago," I cut in, my voice sharpening. "I signed the closing papers on the 14th. The deed has been transferred. The money is in my account. That key you used, it is illegal. You are breaking into a house that I do not own anymore." Paige stared at me. Her face went from confused to red, a flush of anger rising up her neck. "No," she screamed. "That is impossible. Mom said it is family property. She said we have the right—" "Mom lied," I said. "Or she is delusional. Either way, you are currently committing a felony." "It is family property," Paige shrieked again, her voice cracking. The conviction in her tone was terrifying. She genuinely believed that because her last name was Moore, she had a divine right to the floorboards I had paid for. "You cannot sell it without asking us, where am I supposed to live? I already gave up my apartment." "That sounds like a personal problem," I said. "You bitch." Paige spat at the screen. In the background, I heard a heavy thud and the sound of voices escalating. "We are not leaving." A man's voice boomed. My blood ran cold. That was not Trent. Paige's boyfriend. That was my father. "Paige," I said, my grip tightening on the phone. "Is Dad there?" "Yes, Dad is here. And Mom," Paige yelled, panning the camera wildly. I saw them. Dale and Cynthia Moore were standing in the entryway of the house I no longer owned. My father was pointing a finger at Jordan Hargrove, his face purple with exertion. My mother was trying to push past Elise, holding a potted plant as if she were just there to decorate. "This is a family misunderstanding," I heard my father bellow at the terrified new owner. "You put that bat down. My daughter owns this house, and we have a right to be here." This was worse than I thought. This wasn't just Paige sneaking in. This was an invasion. They were moving in. I ended the FaceTime call immediately. Paige's screaming face vanished. I pulled up my contacts and found the number I had saved 2 weeks ago under Byers Jordan Elise. I hit dial. It rang once, twice, then a breathless, panicked voice answered. "Hello, who is this?" "Jordan, it is Lillian Moore," I said. "I am so sorry. Put me on speakerphone, right now." "Lillian." Jordan sounded like he was hyperventilating. "Your family, they just walked in. They have keys. The police are 3 minutes away, but this guy is getting in my face." "Put me on speaker." "Jordan," I commanded. "Loud?" There was a fumbling sound, then a burst of static. I heard my mother's voice, shrill and indignant. "Utterly disrespectful. We are just moving her things in." "Everyone shut up," I said. My voice, amplified by Jordan's phone, echoed through the hallway of the house in Nashville. The silence that followed was absolute. "Lillian," my mother's voice wavered. "Lillian, thank goodness. Tell these people to leave. They are frightening your sister." "Jordan," I said, ignoring my mother completely. "Do not hang up. I am sending you an email right now. It is a PDF copy of the final closing statement and the transfer of deed recorded with the county clerk on the 14th of this month. It proves you are the sole legal owner of the property. I switched apps on my phone, my fingers flying across the screen. I attached the file and hit send. Lillian, what are you doing? My father's voice was low, warning. It was the voice he used when I was a teenager, and I questioned his spending. Do not involve outsiders in this. We settle this as a family. There is no family here. Dad, I said, staring at the gray water of the canal. There is a homeowner, and there are trespassers. I just sent the proof to Jordan. You sold the house, my mother gasped. It sounded like she had been slapped. Without telling us, Lillian, how could you? That house was for everyone. It was in my name, I said. I paid the mortgage, I paid the insurance, and I sold it. The money is mine. The house is theirs. You selfish little... Paige started screaming in the background. Listen to me, I said, cutting her off. The police are coming. If you are still inside that house when they arrive, Jordan has every right to press charges. And looking at the fact that you used a key I explicitly told you was for emergencies only, this is not accidental trespassing. This is burglary. We are your parents, my father roared. The speaker crackled with the force of his volume. You tell them to back off. You tell them we have permission. I cannot give permission for a house I do not own, I said calmly. Lillian, please. My mother wept. The switch to victimhood was instant. Paige has nowhere to go. She is stressed. She needs stability. How can you do this to her? I didn't do anything to her, I said. She broke into a stranger's house. I got the email, Jordan said, his voice shaking but gaining strength. I have the deed right here on my screen. Good, I said. Show it to the officers when they arrive. I could hear the sirens now. They were faint at first, a distant wail coming through the phone speaker, growing louder with every second. The sound cut through the noise of my family's confusion like a knife. Lillian, stop this, Paige screamed. I could hear the panic setting in. Real panic this time. Not the performative kind she used to get her way. They are going to arrest me. Do something. I am doing something, I said. I am letting you experience the consequences of your actions for the first time in your life. You are dead to us, my father shouted. If you let them take your sister, do not bother coming back. I am already gone, Dad, I said. The sirens were loud now. Right outside the front door, blue and red lights would be flashing through the front windows, dancing across the walls I had painted. I heard the heavy thud of car doors slamming and the crunch of boots on the driveway. Police, a voice shouted from the distance. Open the door. Jordan, I said, my voice cold and flat. If they do not leave immediately, I fully support you filing a police report. Do not let them talk you out of it. Lillian, my mother screamed, her voice breaking into a sob. I tapped the red button and ended the call. The silence of Amsterdam rushed back in. The wind rustled the leaves of the elm trees lining the canal. A boat horn sounded in the distance, low and mournful. I looked down at my latte. The foam had dissolved, leaving just a flat, brown surface. My hand was shaking. Just a little. Not from fear, from adrenaline. I had just detonated the bridge back home. I watched the water flow, dark and steady, and took another sip of my cold coffee. It tasted bitter, but it was the only thing that felt real. The war had started, and for the first time, I had fired the first shot. To understand why I pressed that red button and let the police descend on my own sister, you have to understand the architecture of the Moore family. It was not built on love. It was built on a very specific, unspoken economy of needs. In that economy, my sister Paige was the consumer, and I was the supplier. It started back in Columbus, Ohio, in a house that always smelled faintly of lemon polish and desperation. From the time we were small enough to fit in the back seat of a sedan, the roles were cast in concrete. Paige was the golden child, the one who needed protection, applause, and constant tending. I was the sensible one. Sensible sounds like a compliment when you hear it at a dinner party, but when you are 7 years old, sensible is just a polite way of saying you are invisible. My parents, Dale and Cynthia, loved to tell people how different we were. They would stand in the kitchen, swirling their wine, and say, "Paige just lights up a room. Does she not? She has such a fragile spirit, but Lillian is a rock. Lillian can handle anything." They made my resilience sound like a gift they had given me, rather than a callus I had developed from years of friction. The difference in our upbringing was not subtle. It was mathematical. I remember the summer I turned 16. In the suburbs of Ohio, a car was not just a vehicle, it was freedom. I had spent the previous 2 years working weekends at a frozen yogurt shop, saving every dime I made in a shoebox taped under my bed. I had calculated the cost of a used sedan, insurance, and gas. I had a PowerPoint presentation prepared for my parents to show them I could cover 50% of the cost if they would co-sign the loan. I presented my case on a Tuesday night after dinner. My father looked at my spreadsheets, nodded impressively, and then closed the folder. "Lillian," he said, using his serious, teaching moment voice, "we are so proud of your work ethic, but we think it is important for you to understand the value of patience. If we help you buy a car now, we rob you of the satisfaction of doing it yourself later. Besides, the bus system in Columbus is excellent for building character." I took the bus. I woke up at 5 in the morning to get to school for band practice. I walked 3 miles in the snow when the schedule ran late. I built character until I was freezing cold and exhausted. 6 months later, Paige turned 16. On the morning of her birthday, I woke up to squealing. In the driveway sat a brand new, cherry red compact SUV with a giant white bow on the hood. I stood in the driveway, my backpack heavy on my shoulder, watching Paige jump up and down, hugging my mother. I waited for the explanation. I waited for the talk about character. Instead, my mother looked at me, caught my eye, and offered a tight, apologetic smile that did not reach her eyes. "She needs it for safety, Lillian," my mother whispered to me later, as I was pouring cereal. "Paige is not like you. She gets anxious on public transport. She is delicate. We could not bear the thought of her standing out in the cold." That was the thesis statement of our lives. Paige's comfort was a necessity. My comfort was a luxury. Paige's anxiety was a medical emergency. My anxiety was a mood I needed to control. This dynamic did not fade as we grew up. It metastasized. When it came time for college, the checkbook opened wide for Paige. She went to a private liberal arts college that cost more per semester than my father made in a year. They paid for her tuition, her sorority dues, her meal plan, and a private tutor when she nearly failed introductory sociology. They called it investing in her potential. I went to a state university. I worked 20 hours a week at the library and another 10 hours at a bar on weekends. When I asked for help with textbooks during my sophomore year, my father sighed and showed me his credit card statement. "Money is tight right now, Lily," he said. "Paige's tuition just went up, and she needs to network. You are doing so well on your own. You are so resourceful. We do not worry about you." I learned then that competence is a double-edged sword. The better you are at surviving, the less people think you need help. And in the Moore family, help was a finite resource, entirely allocated to the sister who could not balance a checkbook to save her life. I became the designated fixer. It was a role I fell into because I thought it would earn me their love. I thought if I was useful enough, eventually, they would look at me the way they looked at her. When Paige got fired from her first marketing job for personality conflicts, which meant she refused to show up before 10 in the morning, I was the one who edited her resume. When Paige racked up $5,000 in credit card debt buying designer handbags she could not afford. My parents called a family meeting. They did not ask Paige to return the bags. They looked at me. "Lillian," my father said, leaning forward, "you have that savings account from your bonus at work. Could you float your sister alone, just until she gets back on her feet? We are a little tapped out." I paid it. I always paid it. I told myself it was what families did. But the moment that truly broke me, the moment the ice finally entered my veins, happened 3 years ago. I was living in a small rental apartment, working 60-hour weeks at Marrow Peak Analytics, trying to claw my way up the corporate ladder. I had come down with a severe case of influenza. My fever was hovering around 102 degrees. My bones felt like they were made of crushed glass. I was curled up on my bathroom floor, waiting for the nausea to pass. When my phone rang, it was my mother. "Lillian, you need to come over to Paige's apartment," she said. No hello. No asking how I was. "Mom, I am sick," I rasped. "I think I have the flu. I cannot stand up." "Oh, stop being dramatic," she snapped. "Paige is in a crisis. Her landlord is doing a surprise inspection tomorrow morning, and the place is a disaster. She is having a panic attack. She cannot breathe. Lillian, she needs you to help her organize." "I have a fever," I said, tears of frustration hot in my eyes. "Take some ibuprofen and get over there," my mother commanded. "Family comes first." I went. I drove through a blurred fever dream to Paige's apartment. It was not just messy. It was a biohazard. Takeout boxes rot on the counter. Clothes piled knee-deep in the living room. Paige was sitting on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, watching a reality TV show. She did not look like she was having a panic attack. She looked bored. "Oh, hey," she said, not looking up. "The bathroom is the worst part. You should start there." I spent 4 hours scrubbing my sister's toilet and hauling bags of trash down 3 flights of stairs while my head throbbed and sweat poured down my back. My mother sat at the kitchen table, drinking tea, occasionally pointing out a spot I had missed. At one point, I had to sit down because the room was spinning. I leaned my head against the cool refrigerator, closing my eyes. "Lillian, honestly," my mother's voice cut through the haze. "If you are going to help. Do not mope. Your sister is under enough stress without you bringing the mood down." I opened my eyes and looked at them. Paige was scrolling through Instagram. My mother was criticizing my scrubbing technique. "I am sick," I whispered. "You are fine," my mother said dismissively. "You are always fine. Do not be selfish. Lillian, it does not become you." Selfish, the word hung in the air, vibrating. I had given them my money. I had given them my time. I had sacrificed my comfort, my sleep, and my dignity. And the moment I needed 5 minutes to breathe, I was selfish. That was the night the Lillian they knew died. I just did not hold a funeral for her yet. I finished cleaning the apartment. I did not say a word. I drove home, shivering violently, and crawled into bed. The next morning, I bought a notebook. I started keeping a ledger. It was not a diary of teenage angst. It was a forensic accounting of my relationship with my family. I wrote down every dollar I gave them. I wrote down every hour of labor I performed. I wrote down every insult disguised as a compliment. April 4th. Paid Paige's car insurance. $300. No thank you received. May 12th. Dad asked me to fix his laptop. Spent 4 hours. He criticized my job choice the entire time. July 10th. Mom forgot my birthday. Called 2 days later to ask if I could drive Paige to the airport. I did not do this to be petty. I did it to see the truth. I needed data to override the programming they had installed in my brain. The data showed a clear trend. I was not a member of this family. I was a utility. I was like electricity or running water, essential, expected, and only noticed when I stopped working. When I finally bought my house in Nashville, I did not buy it for investment. I bought it as a fortress. I found a fixer-upper in a quiet neighborhood, a place with good bones and a heavy oak front door. I put my own money into it. I sanded the floors myself. I chose the paint colors, cool blues and grays. Nothing like the beige, suffocating warmth of my childhood home. For the first time in my life, I had something that was purely mine. But my family did not see a sanctuary. They saw a resource. The first time they visited, they did not bring a housewarming gift. My father walked around the perimeter, tapping the walls. "Good equity here," he muttered. "This is a solid asset for the family portfolio." Family portfolio, as if they had contributed a single cent. My mother walked into the guest room, the room I had set up as a library, a quiet space for reading and thinking. She frowned at the bookshelves. "We will have to clear this out," she said, waving a hand at my collection of novels. "If Paige needs to stay over, she will need space for her clothes, and maybe a vanity here. The lighting is good." I remember standing in the doorway, gripping the door frame until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them that this was not a hotel for wayward golden children. This was my home, but I did not scream. I was playing the long game now. I smiled the tight, thin smile of the sensible one and said nothing. I knew then that if I ever wanted to be free, I could not just move away. I could not just set boundaries. Boundaries are for people who respect lines. My parents and sister did not see lines. They saw obstacles to be bulldozed. I knew that to escape, I would have to do something drastic. I would have to sever the limb to save the body. So when the job offer in Amsterdam came across my desk, I did not just see a career move. I saw the exit door I had been building towards since I was 16 years old. Shivering at a bus stop while my sister drove by in a heated SUV. I looked at my ledger. The debt was paid. I owed them nothing. But they were about to find out that the Bank of Lillian was permanently closed, and the foreclosure was going to be brutal. My house in Nashville was not a mansion. It was a 1950s brick ranch that sat on a quarter-acre of land that smelled of honeysuckle in the spring and wood smoke in the autumn. But to me, it was the Louvre. It was the Taj Mahal. It was the first physical object in my life that existed solely because I willed it to. I had spent 6 months eating peanut butter sandwiches and working overtime to save the 20% down payment. I had spent another 3 months living in construction dust, learning how to refinish hardwood floors because I could not afford a professional to do it. Every strip of molding, every light fixture, every shade of paint was a decision I made without a committee. There was no mother hovering to tell me beige was safer. There was no sister complaining that the smell of varnish gave her a headache. When I finished the renovations, the silence in the house was delicious. It was a clean, empty silence. It did not ask for anything. Then came the housewarming party. I use the word party loosely. In the Moore family, gatherings were not celebrations. They were inspections. I had invited a few friends from work, but the atmosphere changed the moment my parents' sedan pulled into the driveway. The air in the living room, which had been light and filled with jazz music, suddenly felt heavy, compressed by the weight of their expectations. My mother, Cynthia, did not bring a bottle of wine or a plant. She walked in, handed me her coat without looking at me, and began a slow, methodical tour of the ground floor. She touched everything. She ran her fingers over the quartz countertops I had installed. She tapped the glass of the new windows. It felt less like she was admiring my home and more like she was checking for dust. She stopped in the kitchen, where I was arranging a charcuterie board. She leaned against the island, looking out into the open-concept living room where my friends were chatting. "It is a lot of space, Lillian," she said. Her voice was soft, laced with that toxic concern she specialized in. "It is 3 bedrooms," I said, focusing on slicing the Gouda. "It is a standard size. For a family, yes," she corrected gently, "but for just you. Do you not feel lonely? It seems like such a waste of resources to heat and cool all these empty rooms just for one person." There it was, the word waste, in her eyes. My comfort was an excess. If I was not sharing it, if I was not using my space to shelter the family's chosen one, I was being gluttonous. "I like the space, Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I work from home often. I need the room." "Well," she sighed, looking around with a tragic expression. "I suppose if you can afford to be so indulgent, that is your choice." While my mother was busy making me feel guilty for existing in 3 dimensions, my father, Dale, was conducting a financial audit. He did not care about the decor. He cared about the asset. I watched him walk the perimeter of the backyard, staring at the fence line, then pacing out the dimensions of the deck. He came back inside, wiping his shoes aggressively on the mat, and cornered me by the refrigerator. "What is the comp value in this neighborhood?" he asked. No hello, no congratulations. "Property values are rising about 6% annually," I said, knowing he would not let it go until I gave him a number. He nodded, satisfied. "Good. Smart buy. This area is gentrifying. You could easily rent this out for $2,500 a month if you ever needed to, maybe more if you finish the basement." He looked at me, his eyes gleaming with a calculation that made my stomach turn. "It is good to have options. Lillian, you never know when the family might need a fallback. Real estate is the only real safety net." He was not saying my safety net. He was saying the family's, He was mentally adding my deed to his portfolio. Then there was Paige. My sister had arrived late, of course, wearing shoes she could not walk in and a dress that cost more than my monthly utility bill. She floated through the house with a glass of red wine in her hand, wine she had not brought dangerously close to my new cream-colored rug. I found her in the hallway, standing in the doorway of the second guest bedroom. I had set this room up as a dedicated office and library. It had floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a heavy oak desk, and a reading chair I had saved up for months to buy. It was my sanctuary. Paige was spinning around in the center of the room, looking at the ceiling. "Nice," she said when she saw me. "The light in here is perfect for selfies. South-facing, right?" "Yes," I said, stepping between her and the room, instinctively guarding it. "This could be my room," she said. She did not say it like a question. She said it like she was choosing a table at a restaurant. "It is my office, Paige," I said firmly. She waved her hand, dismissing my career with a flick of her wrist. "You can put a desk anywhere. You can put it in the basement. This room has the best vibe. If I ever need to crash, or if I just need a break from my roommate, this is totally where I'm staying. We can move that bookshelf to make room for a queen bed." "No," I said. She stopped spinning and looked at me, blinking. "What?" I said no, I repeated. "This is an office. It is not a guest room. It is not a crash pad. I bought this house for me. Paige." She stared at me for a second, and then she laughed. It was a high tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "God, Lillian, relax. I was just saying, you do not have to be so territorial. It is not like you are using it at night." She brushed past me, spilling a tiny drop of wine on the hardwood, and went back to the party. She did not take me seriously. To her, my no was just a pause button she could unpause whenever she wanted. The real trap sprung at the end of the night. My friends had left. The house was quiet again. But the air was thick with unsaid things. My parents were putting on their coats. My father stopped at the door, patting his pockets as if looking for his keys. "You know, Lily," he said, using the nickname I hated. I was thinking, you are a single woman living alone in a new neighborhood. Accidents happen. Pipes burst. You could lock yourself out. I knew where this was going. I stiffened. "I am fine. Dad, I have a keypad entry. Kick eyes." "Technology fails," he said darkly. "Batteries die. You need a physical backup. We should have a spare key, just for emergencies. If there is a fire or a flood and you are at work, who is going to let the fire department in?" "The fire department has axes, Dad," I said. "They do not need a key." "Do not be difficult," my mother chimed in, adjusting her scarf. "It is for your own safety. We are just looking out for you. What if you slip in the shower and cannot get to the phone? Do you want to rot in there for days?" They were experts at this. They took a reasonable concerned safety and weaponized it to gain access. If I refused, I was being paranoid and unreasonable. If I agreed, I was handing over my sovereignty. I looked at them. They stood there, united. A wall of parental concern that masked their desire for control. I was exhausted. I just wanted them to leave. "Fine," I said. I went to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a single silver key. It was the only spare I had. "This is for emergencies only," I said, holding it out but not letting go when my father reached for it. I looked him dead in the eye. "I mean it. Dad, life or death, fire or flood. Do not use this to drop off mail. Do not use this to check on the plants. Do not give it to Paige." Of course, my father said. Snatching the key from my hand with a little too much eagerness, he slipped it into his pocket. "We respect your privacy. Lillian, you act like we are intruders." They left. I locked the door behind them and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. I felt a knot of dread in my stomach. I knew, deep down, that I had just signed a contract I did not understand the terms of. The violations started small. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find a bag of groceries on my counter. My mother had let herself in to drop off some things she thought I needed. She texted me later, "Saw you were low on milk. You are welcome." I changed the alarm code, but I could not change the lock without starting a war. Then Paige started stopping by. She would call me from the driveway. "I am outside. I really need to pee." Or, "I just had a fight with Trent. Can I sit on your porch for a minute?" If I was home, I had to let her in. It would be cruel not to. And once she was in, she spread out. She would leave her jacket on the chair. She would leave her makeup in the bathroom. It was a slow colonization. She was marking her territory, one lip gloss at a time. The breaking point of my patience the moment I realized this was not just annoying, but systematic happened on a Sunday afternoon. I was out running errands. I checked Instagram while waiting in line at the grocery store. Paige had posted a story. It was a photo of her legs, stretched out on my coffee table, with a glass of white wine in her hand. In the background, my television was on. The caption read, "Sunday Sanctuary. Finally some peace and quiet." She was in my house. I was not there. I called her immediately. "Paige, are you in my house?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage. "Oh, hey," she answered, sounding completely unbothered. "Yeah, Mom gave me the key. My internet is down and I needed to submit a job application. I knew you would not mind." "I do mind," I shouted, people in the grocery store turning to look at me. "Get out, now." "God, you are so dramatic," she groaned. "I am leaving in like 20 minutes. Chill out." She hung up on me. When I got home, she was gone, but the glass was in the sink, unwashed. The television was still warm, and the throw pillows were crushed. I sat on my sofa, the sofa I had paid for, in the house I owned, and I felt like a guest. I realized then that they were testing the perimeter. They were pushing against the fence to see if it would hold. And it was not holding. My father saw my house as an asset to be leveraged. My mother saw it as a commune for the family. And Paige saw it as her backup plan. I knew with absolute certainty that if I ever left town for more than a few days, I would come back to find Paige living in the guest room. And once she was in, getting her out would be impossible. My parents would protect her. They would say, "She is your sister. She has nowhere else to go." They would turn me into the villain for wanting my own home back. I was trapped. My greatest achievement had become my greatest liability. Then, 3 days later, the notification popped up on my laptop screen. It was 10 o'clock at night. I was working late, trying to distract myself from the phantom presence of my family in my house. Subject: offer of employment. Senior data analyst, Amsterdam branch. My heart stopped. I opened the email. It was from the European partner of Marrow Peak Analytics. They were offering me a 2-year contract, a significant raise, relocation assistance, a chance to work on international projects. It was everything I had ever worked for. It was the dream I had buried under layers of family obligation. Normally, a person reads an email like that and feels joy. They feel excitement. They want to call their friends and scream. I sat there in the glow of the monitor, and I felt cold terror. I looked around my living room. I looked at the shadows stretching across the floor. If I took this job, I would have to leave Nashville. And the moment my plane took off, the Moore family would descend. They would not just visit, they would occupy. Paige would move in to watch the place. My parents would store their excess furniture in the basement. By the time I came back in 2 years, this house would not be mine anymore. It would be a carcass they had picked clean. I could not leave the house empty, but I could not stay. I stared at the blinking cursor on the screen. I had 2 choices. I could stay here, guarding my fortress like a prisoner, fighting a losing war against 3 people who did not respect the word no, or I could go, and lose the only thing I had ever truly owned, unless I made sure there was nothing left for them to take. I felt a strange, dark clarity settle over me. The fear began to recede, replaced by the cold, hard logic that had always been my survival mechanism. I reached for my phone. I did not call my parents to share the good news. I opened the browser and searched for a real estate attorney. I was not going to ask for permission. I was going to scorch the earth. The offer letter from Amsterdam sat on my screen, a glowing rectangle of white light that represented the only thing I had ever truly wanted escape. It was a transfer to a partner firm of Marrow Peak Analytics, a promotion to senior strategist, and a salary increase of 30%. But the money was irrelevant. The currency that mattered here was distance. 4,132 miles of distance, to be exact. I stared at the accept button. My finger hovered over the mouse. In any other family, this would be the moment you call your mother. You pop champagne. You celebrate. But I did not call anyone. Instead, I closed my eyes and ran a simulation in my head. I was a data analyst. Predictive modeling was my job. I input the variables: my departure, my empty house, my sister's instability, my parents' entitlement. The output was catastrophic. If I told them I was leaving, the conversation would go exactly like this. My mother would gasp and say how brave I was. My father would immediately ask what I planned to do with the asset, and before I could finish my sentence, Paige would volunteer to house sit. "It makes perfect sense," my mother would say. "Paige needs a place, and you need someone to keep the pipes from freezing. She can pay the utilities. It keeps the money in the family." I met her at a coffee shop 3 towns over, wearing sunglasses, feeling ridiculous but necessary. "I need to sell fast," I told her. "And I need it to be invisible. No open houses, no Zillow listing. You bring me vetted buyers who are ready to close in under 30 days. Elena looked at me, assessing the desperation in my posture. "Divorce," she asked gently. "Family," I said. "Ah," she nodded. "Same thing, usually." We priced it to move. I undercut the market value by about 5%. It was a pain tax I was willing to pay for speed. 3 days later, Elena brought me the Hargroves. Elise and Jordan, they were a young professional couple, relocating from Chicago. Jordan worked in finance. Elise was in tech. They were serious, pre-approved, and looking for a quick close. They walked through the house once on a Tuesday morning while everyone in my family was at work. They loved it. They loved the quartz countertops my mother had criticized. They loved the wasteful guest room. They made an offer that afternoon. I signed the contract digitally from my office at Marrow Peak, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. It was done. The house was under contract. Now came the hard part, the extraction. I had 2 weeks to pack up my entire life without raising a single red flag. I could not rent a moving truck. A moving truck is a billboard that says I am leaving, if my father drove by, which he did, frequently. Just to check on the neighborhood, he would see it. So, I improvised. I went to 3 different hardware stores and bought opaque gray plastic bins. I did not buy moving boxes. Boxes look like moving. Bins look like organizing. I staged the house. If anyone looked in the windows, everything appeared normal. The furniture was in place. The art was on the walls. But inside the closets, I was dismantling my existence. I packed at night, with the blinds drawn. I wrapped my grandmother's china in winter sweaters. I purged 70% of my belongings. I sold my books to a used bookstore 2 counties away. I donated bags of clothes to a shelter on the other side of the city. I felt like a criminal in my own home. I would jump every time a car drove down the street. I would freeze, holding a stack of plates, listening to the engine. Was it my parents' sedan? Was it Paige's cherry red SUV? I was living in a state of high-functioning paranoia. The furniture was the biggest problem. I could not take the sofa, the bed, or the dining table to Amsterdam, and I could not sell them on Facebook Marketplace without risking Paige seeing the posts. I made a deal with the Hargroves. I offered them the furniture for a fraction of its value. "It is a turnkey sale," I told Jordan over the phone. "You get the house, the furniture, the appliances. I walk away with 2 suitcases. They accepted. It was clean. It was total. But I still had to manage the narrative. I needed a cover story for why the house would be occupied after I left. One that would keep my family away long enough for the Hargroves to change the locks and settle in. I invited my parents and Paige over for dinner 4 days before my flight. I cooked lasagna. The smell of garlic and tomato sauce filled the kitchen, a scent that usually meant comfort, but tonight felt like deception. We sat around the dining table, the table that technically belonged to Jordan Hargrove now. "I have some news," I said, pouring water. "The company is sending me to Europe for a project. I will be based in Amsterdam for a while." "Europe," my mother clapped her hands. "Oh, Lillian, how exciting, you will have to send us photos." "When do you leave?" my father asked, his eyes already narrowing. "Tuesday," I said. Tuesday. Paige choked on her bread. That is so soon. What are you doing with the house? The question hung in the air. I saw the look pass between Paige and my mother. The calculation. The opportunity. Actually, I said, keeping my voice steady, that is all taken care of. Since it is a corporate relocation, the company has a strict policy about assets. They are paying for a property management firm to handle the house. Property management? My father frowned. Why pay a stranger? We can check on it for you. Yeah, Paige chimed in, leaning forward. I can just stay here. Lil, it makes way more sense. I can water your plants and bring in the mail. I will do it for free. I wish I could, I lied. But the company insisted. They are renting the house to a corporate client, an executive from Germany who is coming in for a year. The contract is incredibly strict. High security, no unauthorized visitors, liability clauses. I used the language I knew would shut them down. Liability, corporate client, contract, an executive. My mother wrinkled her nose. Will he sleep in your bed? That is so impersonal. Lillian, it is business. Mom, I said. The rent they are paying covers the mortgage and then some. I cannot turn it down. Well, my father grunted, clearly disappointed that he would not be the landlord by proxy. If it is a corporate contract, I suppose that is smart. Just make sure they have good insurance. They do? I said. I thought I had won. I thought I had outsmarted them. But later that night, as I was cleaning up the dishes, I asked Paige to help me carry a box of winter clothes, actually my favorite coats for Amsterdam, to the car. We walked past the key hook by the back door. So, Paige said, leaning against the wall. This German guy, is he hot? I have never met him, I said. The agency handles it. Right, she said. She looked at the key hook. There was nothing there. I had removed the spare key days ago. Did you lose the spare? She asked casually. I gave it to the management company, I said. Why? Just wondering, she shrugged. I remember the code for the lockbox anyway. 4921, right? I froze. I had never given Paige the code to the lockbox. I had a manual lockbox on the back porch for contractors when I was doing the renovations, but I had taken it down a year ago. How do you know that code? I asked, my voice dropping. Oh, she giggled, looking a little flushed. I do not know. Maybe I saw you type it in once. I took that box down last year, I said. Whatever. She waved her hand. Memory like a steel trap, unlike you. Miss Forgetful. She walked out to the car. I stood there, staring at the empty hook. A cold realization washed over me. The emergency key I had given my parents, the one they swore was for life and death situations, only Paige had access to it. And not only did she have access, but she had also memorized the codes I used. I went to my phone and checked my security camera logs from 6 months ago. I scrolled back to a weekend when I was out of town for a conference. There was no footage. The system had been offline for 4 hours on a Saturday afternoon. I had assumed it was a Wi-Fi glitch. Now, I knew better. They had been here. They had been in my house, testing the boundaries, learning the locks. Paige knowing that code was not a quirk of memory. It was evidence of reconnaissance. The rental lie was not enough. If they thought the house was just rented, they might still try to come by. They might try to inspect the property for me. Or Paige might try to charm this imaginary German executive. Selling was the only option. I had to cut the cord completely. 2 days later, on a Monday morning, I met Jordan and Elise at the title company. The room smelled of stale coffee and fresh toner. We signed stack after stack of paper. I watched my name be notarized, over and over, signing away my claim to the hardwood floors and the south-facing windows. When the final document was signed, the title officer slid a check across the table. It was the equity, my freedom fund. I reached into my purse and pulled out the heavy ring of keys. The front door, the back door, the garage, the mailbox. Here, I said, placing them in Jordan's hand. The metal felt warm from my grip. Thank you, Lillian, Jordan said, smiling. He looked so happy. He had no idea he was buying a war zone. Jordan, I said, leaning in. Elise, listen to me. The property management story I told you about, the one I told my family, you need to know that they do not know you are the owners yet. To them, you are the corporate tenants. Right, Elise nodded. We remember. We can play along if we run into them. No, I said intensely. Do not play along. Change the locks. Today. Do not wait for the weekend. Do not wait for tomorrow. Call a locksmith the second you leave this room. Jordan frowned, a flicker of concern crossing his face. Is there a safety issue? You said the neighborhood was quiet. The neighborhood is quiet, I said. My family is not. They have boundaries issues. Just please, for your own peace of mind, change the locks. Okay, Jordan said slowly. We will. I could tell he thought I was being neurotic. He thought I was just an anxious seller having trouble letting go. He did not understand that I was trying to hand him a shield. I walked out of the title company and into the bright Tennessee sunlight. I sat in my car and gripped the steering wheel. I was homeless. I was liquid. I drove to the airport. I left my car in the long-term lot I had arranged for a service to pick it up and sell it the next day. I checked my 2 suitcases. I went through security. When I sat at the gate, waiting to board the flight to Amsterdam, I felt a sensation I had never felt before. It was not happiness. It was lighter than that. It was the absence of weight. The house was gone. The mortgage was gone. The connection was severed. I texted my mother, boarding now. Love you guys. I will call when I land. She replied, safe travels. We will check on the house for you on Friday. I stared at the screen. We will check on the house. Even with my lie about the corporate tenant, even with the strict contract, they were still planning to go over. They were going to check. I turned off my phone. I told myself it was over. I told myself that once Jordan and Elise changed the locks, my family would try their key, find it did not work, and go home. They would be annoyed, but they would be stopped. I underestimated them. I assumed they would act like rational people who encountered a locked door. I forgot that to people like my sister. A locked door is not a barrier. It is an insult, and an insult demands a response. I boarded the plane, ordered a glass of wine, and watched the ground fall away. I thought I had escaped. I did not know that I had just pulled the pin on a grenade and tossed it into the lap of 2 innocent strangers. I closed my eyes and slept, dreaming of canals and silence. I woke up 8 hours later in Amsterdam, thinking the hard part was over. I was wrong. The hard part had not even started. The connection on the speakerphone crackled, but the chaos in Nashville came through with high-definition clarity. I was 4,000 miles away, holding my breath in Amsterdam, listening to the dismantling of my family's delusion. The sirens I had heard at the end of the call were no longer approaching. They had arrived. I heard the heavy, rhythmic thud of knuckles against a solid wood door, my old front door. Police department, a voice boomed. Open the door. Do not open it. That was my sister, Paige. Her voice was not fearful. It was indignant. It was the voice of a woman who believes the rules of gravity do not apply to her because she has never been allowed to fall. They have no right. We live here. Open the door, Paige. That was Jordan, the new owner. He sounded breathless, his voice tight with the adrenaline of a man who had just spent 20 minutes defending his property with a baseball bat. I heard the lock turn. The audio shifted as the door swung open. The ambient noise of the street wind, a distant dog barking, the static of police radios flooded the entryway. Step aside, a deep, authoritative voice commanded. Drop the bat, sir. Hands where I can see them. I am the homeowner, Jordan said, his voice shaking but rapid. This is my house. These people broke in. I want them removed immediately. He is lying, Paige shrieked. My sister owns this house. I have the key. Look, I have the key right here. I closed my eyes, visualizing the scene. Paige would be thrusting that silver key, the emergency key, into the officer's face as if it were a holy relic. She would be standing there, likely wearing her favorite athleisure wear, flanked by her boyfriend, Trent, and surrounded by the cardboard boxes she had dragged into the hallway. Officer, this is a giant misunderstanding. My father's voice cut in. It was his boardroom voice, smooth, condescending, designed to make the other person feel small. I am Dale Moore. My daughter Lillian owns this property. We are simply moving her sister in. This gentleman here seems to be under the impression that a clerical error gives him the right to threaten my family. It is not a clerical error, Elise, Jordan's wife, shouted. She was usually soft-spoken, but fear had sharpened her edges. We bought the house. We closed 2 weeks ago. Officer, I said. I spoke clearly, projecting my voice toward the microphone of my phone, praying the connection would hold. Officer, can you hear me? I am on the speakerphone. There was a pause, the rustling of fabric. Who is this? The officer asked. My name is Lillian Moore, I said. I am the former owner of the property at 4210 Maplewood Drive. I am currently in the Netherlands. I need you to know that the people standing in that hallway, Dale Moore, Cynthia Moore, Paige Moore, and Trent Miller, have absolutely no legal right to be there. Lillian. My mother's voice was a gasp of betrayal. Lillian, stop this right now. Tell him you let Paige stay. I did not, I said. Officer, I sold this house to Jordan and Elise Hargrove on the 14th of this month. The deed has been recorded. The title has transferred. The key my sister is holding was stolen from my possession under false pretenses. She is trespassing. She is lying, Trent yelled. I could picture him, wearing his backwards baseball cap, puffing out his chest. We have a verbal contract. Lillian told Paige she could live here in Tennessee. A verbal lease is binding. Trent had taken 1 semester of pre-law at a community college before dropping out to become a DJ. He loved to throw around terms he did not understand. There is no lease. Trent, I said cold. There is no text message. There is no email. There is zero evidence because it never happened. Officer, I just emailed a copy of the final settlement statement and the recorded deed to Mr. Hargrove's phone. Please ask him to show it to you. I have it right here, Jordan said. I heard the shuffling of movement. A moment of silence stretched out, thick and heavy. I could imagine the officer squinting at the small screen, scrolling through the PDF that proved my parents were not the monarchs of this kingdom. Mr. Moore, the officer said, his tone shifting from investigative to firm. This document shows the property was sold 18 days ago. The owners listed are Jordan and Elise Hargrove. Well, Lillian clearly made a mistake, my father sputtered, his composure cracking. She has been under a lot of stress. She probably forgot to update us, but the fact remains, we have family property rights. Sir, the officer interrupted, there is no such thing as family property rights on a sold house. You are trespassing. We are not trespassing, Paige screamed. I moved my stuff in. I have mail coming here. You changed your mailing address yesterday. Paige, I said, I got the notification from the post office because my mail forwarding is still active. That is not residency. That is fraud. You set me up, Paige wailed. You knew I gave up my apartment. You let me walk into a trap. I did not let you do anything, I said. You stole a key. You waited until you thought I was gone, and you broke into a stranger's house. The only trap here is the one you built yourself. All right, that is enough, the officer barked. Ma'am, sir, you need to grab your personal items and vacate the premises immediately. If you refuse, you will be placed under arrest for criminal trespassing and burglary. You cannot arrest me, Paige sobbed. My dad will sue you, Dad. Do something. This is ridiculous, my mother hissed. Lillian, call them off. Tell them it is a prank. Tell them we are just visiting. I cannot call off the law. Mom, I said. Jordan, do you want them removed? Yes, Jordan said. I want them gone, and I want that key back. Hand over the key, ma'am, the officer said. No, Paige yelled. I heard a scuffle, the sound of bodies colliding with drywall, a sharp cry of pain. Do not touch her, Trent shouted. Back up, the officer yelled. Back up, or you will be tased. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the nightmare scenario I had predicted, playing out in real-time audio. My family, so used to bulldozing through boundaries, had finally hit a wall that hit back. Okay, my father yelled. We are leaving Cynthia. Get Paige. Trent, grab the boxes. I am not leaving. Paige was hysterical now, a guttural, animalistic sobbing. Where am I supposed to go? I have nowhere. Lillian, I hate you, I hate you. Let's go. Miss, a second officer said. We are not asking any more. I heard the dragging sound of cardboard boxes being shoved across the hardwood floor, my beautiful, refinished hardwood floors. I heard the front door open again. If you come back here, the officer's voice faded slightly as they moved on to the porch. You will be arrested on sight. Do you understand? I am going to sue you for emotional distress, Trent shouted, his voice moving further away. Jordan, I said into the silence that followed. Are you still there? I am here, Jordan said. He sounded exhausted. They are on the lawn. The neighbors are all out watching. I am so sorry, I said. I truly am. You said they had boundary issues. Jordan laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You did not say they were insane. Did you get the key? I asked. The officer took it, Jordan said. He is handing it to me now. Good, I said. Call the locksmith. Right now. Do not wait. We are calling, Elise said in the background. Lillian, your sister. She looked at us like we were the ones robbing her. In her mind, you are, I said. To her, the world is just a series of things she hasn't been given yet. I heard the distant sound of a car engine revving aggressively my father's sedan, and then tires screeching on asphalt. They were gone. I will cover the cost of the locksmith, I said. Send me the bill, and if there is any damage to the walls from the boxes, send me that too. Just enjoy Amsterdam, Lillian, Jordan said. We will handle it from here. We are pressing charges if they come back. Please do, I said. I hung up. I sat there at the cafe table. My coffee was cold. The sun had dipped lower, casting long, melancholic shadows across the canal water. My hands were shaking. Not from regret, but from the sheer physical toll of the adrenaline dump. I had done it. I had publicly humiliated them. I had stripped them of their power. I had used the law as a shield and a sword. I took a deep breath, trying to slow my heart rate. I watched a man on a bicycle pedal past, whistling a tune I did not recognize. Then, my phone screen lit up again. It was not a text. It was a FaceTime request. Mom. I stared at the name. Usually, when my mother called after a conflict, it was to demand an apology. It was to tell me I was overreacting. It was to guilt-trip me back into submission. But this time, I knew it would be different. This time, there was no rug to sweep things under. The police had been there. The neighbors had seen Paige being escorted off the property like a common criminal. The narrative of the perfect family had been shattered in front of an audience. I knew I should not answer. I knew the smart tactical move was to block the number and go back to my hotel. But a part of me, the part that had spent 34 years trying to explain myself, trying to be understood, needed to see their faces. I needed to see if the reality had finally pierced their armor. I tapped the green button. The image that filled my screen was not the interior of a car. They were standing on the sidewalk, presumably a few blocks away from the house. The streetlights cast a yellow, sickly glow on their faces. My mother was holding the phone. Her eyes were red, puffy, and wide with a look I had never seen directed at me before. It was not anger, it was horror. Behind her, Paige was sitting on the curb, her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Trent was pacing, yelling into his own phone. My father stood with his back to the camera, staring into the dark, his posture slumped in defeat. Lillian, my mother whispered. Her voice was trembling. She did not scream. She did not scold. Why, she asked, why did you hate us this much? It was the ultimate weaponization of victimhood. Even now, standing on the side of the road because of their own entitlement, I was the villain. I was the one who hated. I looked at her pixelated face, at the woman who had taught me that love was transactional, and I felt a strange, cold peace. I do not hate you, Mom, I said quietly. I just outgrew you. I did not wait for her response. I did not wait for the guilt. I pressed the red button, ending the call. Then, I did something I should have done years ago. I went to my settings. I scrolled down to blocked contacts. I added Mom. I added Dad. I added Paige. The list was complete. I put the phone in my pocket, stood up, and walked away from the canal, merging into the crowd of strangers, finally, truly alone. The screen of my phone lit up again. It was not my mother this time. It was Trent. I had blocked my parents. I had blocked my sister. But in my haste to sever the digital arteries connecting me to the Moore family organism, I had forgotten the appendage that was Paige's boyfriend. I sat on a wooden bench near the Westerkirk, the church bells chiming the half-hour overhead. I stared at Trent's name pulsing on the screen. I could have blocked him too. I could have thrown the phone into the canal and vanished into the European night. But I knew them. If I went silent now, they would spin a narrative where I was a missing person. They would weaponize their concern. They would call the embassy. They would make my disappearance a new crisis to feed on. I needed to end this, not with a fight, but with a closing statement. I treated this not as a daughter talking to her parents, but as a CEO conducting an exit interview with toxic employees who had just been terminated for cause. I swiped to answer. The video feed stabilized. They were crammed into the front seat of my father's sedan. The dome light was on, casting a harsh, unflattering yellow glare on their faces. It looked like a hostage video, but it was unclear who was holding whom. My father, Dale, was in the driver's seat, phone held high. My mother, Cynthia, was twisted around from the passenger seat and squeezed between the front seats. Leaning forward from the back like a tragic Greek chorus was Paige. They had staged the frame perfectly. Paige was the centerpiece, the evidence of my crime. She was wrapped in a blanket where she got a blanket in the car. I did not know, but she wore it like a shroud. Her eyes were swollen shut. She looked broken. "Lillian," my father said. His voice was not loud. It was low, trembling with a suppression of rage that he thought looked like dignity. "Hello, Dad," I said. I kept my face neutral. I did not frown. I did not smile. I looked at them with the detached curiosity of a biologist observing a petri dish. "Are you happy?" my father asked. He did not ask if I was safe. He did not ask how my flight was. He did not ask if I had a place to sleep in a foreign country. "I am tired," I said. "It has been a long day." A long day. My mother made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You are tired, Lillian. Look at your sister. Look at what you did to her." She grabbed Paige's shoulder and pulled her closer to the camera, physically presenting her to me. "Why?" my mother demanded. "Why did you have to humiliate her like that? Was it not enough to sell the house behind our backs? Did you have to call the police? Did you have to have her dragged out like a criminal in front of the whole neighborhood?" "I did not have her dragged out," I said calmly. "The law did, because she was breaking the law." "She is your sister," my mother hissed. "She went there because she needed a safe haven, and you treated her like a burglar." She entered a home she did not own, using a key she was not authorized to have, after being told the property was sold. I listed the facts, checking them off on my fingers. "That is the definition of burglary. Mom, the police were simply confirming reality. You traumatized her," Cynthia said, her voice dropping to a whisper intended to shame me. "Do you know what this does to a person's psyche? To be evicted, to be threatened with tasers. She is in shock. Lillian, she has trauma." I took a sip of my water. "Trauma is fleeing a war zone. Mom, trauma is surviving a crash. Being asked to leave a house you do not own because you refuse to listen to the owner is not trauma. It is consequences. Stop being so cold." Paige burst out from the back seat. Her voice was hoarse. "You planned this. You waited until you were gone so you could watch me fail. You wanted this to happen." "I wanted to sell my house," I corrected. "You made it a spectacle. I gave you the dignity of a warning. I told you on the phone to leave. You chose to stay and argue with a deed." "We are family," my father interrupted, cutting through the bickering with his favorite philosophical hammer. "Family helps family. Lillian, that is the social contract. We raised you. We supported you. You have an obligation to this unit." "Obligation," I repeated the word, tasting the bitterness of it. "Yes, obligation," he said firm. "When one of us succeeds, we lift the others up. You have resources. You have a career. Paige is struggling. You had an empty house. It was your duty to provide that safety net. Instead, you sold the net for cash. I looked at him, this man who had charged me rent the summer after high school while paying for Paige's sorority dues. Duty is not ownership, Dad, I said. And my house was not a family asset. It was my asset. I bought it. I renovated it. I paid the mortgage. The fact that we share DNA does not give you a lien on my property. It gives us a right to expect compassion, he shouted, the mask slipping. It gives us a right to not be treated like strangers. If strangers broke into my house, I would have called the police, I said. I treated you exactly like what you were acting like trespassers. You are so selfish, Paige spat. The word hung in the air, static and heavy. I paused. I looked at the three of them, huddled in that car, united in their outrage. For 34 years, I had run from that word. I had cleaned toilets, loaned money, and stayed silent to avoid being called selfish. In the Moore Family Dictionary, selfish did not mean caring only for oneself. It meant refusing to be used. It meant having boundaries. It meant saying no. If I was not setting myself on fire to keep them warm, I was selfish. You are right, I said. The three of them blinked. They stopped breathing for a second. They were prepared for a fight, for a denial. They were not prepared for agreement. I am selfish, I continued, my voice steady and hard as diamond. I am keeping my own money. I am keeping my own life. I am keeping my own peace. And if that makes me selfish, then I am the most selfish person you have ever met, and I am fine with that. You do not mean that, my mother said, her voice wavering. She looked frightened. She was realizing that her favorite weapon had just bounced off my chest. I do, I said. Now, since this is the last time we will be speaking for a very long time, I have some administrative business to close out. Administrative business? My father frowned. What are you talking about? I know Paige gave up her apartment, I said. And I know you two probably do not have room for her and Trent and all her boxes in your house without it being a disaster. See, Paige cried out triumphantly. She knows. She knows she made me homeless. So, I ignored her. I have booked a hotel room for you. Paige, 3 nights, at the La Quinta near the airport. It is prepaid. My parents exchanged a look. Relief washed over their faces. They thought I was cracking. They thought this was the olive branch. They thought the old Lillian, the fixer. The payer was back. Oh, Lillian, my mother exhaled. Thank you. I knew you were still in there. I knew you would not leave her on the street. It is room 304, I said. You can check in now. Consider it a severance package. Severance? My father asked, the suspicion returning. Yes, I said, because I am also sending you an email right now. Check your inbox. Dad? He lowered the phone slightly, fumbling to open his email app on the screen while keeping me on the call. I watched his eyes scan the notification. I watched his face turn from confusion to a deep, violet shade of fury. What is this? He roared. It is an invoice, I said. $300 for a locksmith, he read aloud, his voice shaking. $200 for express cleaning, $50 for wall repair. Jordan and Elise sent me the bill for the emergency locksmith they had to call tonight because you refused to hand over the key until the police forced you, I explained. And the cleaning fee is for the mud and scuff marks your boxes left in the hallway. I paid them to preserve my reputation with the buyers. Now, you are going to reimburse me. You are charging us, Paige screamed, after you kicked me out. You are insane. I am balancing the ledger, I said. The hotel room cost $400. The damages cost $550. I deducted the hotel cost from what you owe me. Technically, you still owe me $150, but I am willing to write that off as a loss to close the account. I will not pay this, my father spat at the camera. I will not pay a single dime. You ungrateful, arrogant little... If you do not pay it by Friday, I cut him off, my voice dropping an octave. I will forward the original bills from the locksmith and the cleaning crew directly to you. And since the locksmith's report mentions forced entry recovery, I imagine Jordan could use that if he decides to follow through on the trespassing charges he is currently holding back. You are blackmailing your own father. He looked like he was going to have a stroke. I am settling debts, Dad, I said. You taught me to value money. Remember, you taught me that everything has a cost. Well, tonight had a cost. Do not bother coming home, my mother said. Her voice was ice cold. The mask of the concerned victim was gone, revealed the vindictive woman underneath. If you ever step foot in Tennessee again, do not come to our door. Mom, I said, and for the first time, I smiled. It was a genuine smile. I just sold the only reason I had to ever come back. You will regret this, my father threatened. You need us. You will fail out there alone, and you will come crawling back, and we will not be there. I have been alone for 34 years. Dad, I said, I just finally made it official. I did not wait for their retort. I did not wait for the final curse. I tapped the red button. The screen went black. The silence of the Amsterdam night rushed back in. But this time, it did not feel empty. It felt clean. I sat there for a moment, listening to the canal water lap against the stones. My hands were steady. My breathing was deep and even. I had just fired my parents. I stood up, buttoned my coat against the wind, and began to walk back toward my hotel. I had a new job starting on Monday. I had a new city to learn, and for the first time in my life, my bank account and my soul belonged entirely to me. But as I walked, a small, nagging thought tugged at the back of my mind. My father was a man who needed to win. He did not take losses. He took revenge. I had embarrassed him. I had cost him money. I had stripped him of control. He would not let this end with an invoice. He would find a way to strike back. I checked my email one last time to make sure the invoice had gone through. It had, but right below it, a new notification popped up. It was from my former boss at Marrow Peak in Nashville. Subject urgent. Compliance issue. I frowned. I stopped walking. I opened the email. Lillian, we received a disturbing call this morning regarding an ethics violation. We need to talk before your contract transfers to the Amsterdam branch officially. My stomach dropped. My father knew where I worked. He knew the industry, and he knew that in the world of high-stakes data analytics, reputation was the only currency that mattered more than money. I looked up at the dark sky. The exit interview was over, but the war had just moved to a new battlefield. The email from my former boss, Marcus, was marked with a red exclamation point. The subject line was short, professional, and terrifying compliance inquiry regarding Red Crest account. I stood on the cobblestones of a side street in Amsterdam, the wind biting at my cheeks. I had just finished dismantling my family's emotional hold on me, or so I thought. But the corporate world has a way of dragging you back in, especially when your family's incompetence bleeds into your professional network. I tapped the screen to open the message. Lillian, please call me immediately. We have a situation developing with one of our downstream partners in Nashville. It involves a police report filed at 4210 Maplewood Drive. The name on the report is Moore. I need to know if this is going to blow back on the firm. My stomach turned over. It was not fear for myself. My transaction was clean. It was the realization that the blast radius of my sister's stunt was wider than I had calculated. I dialed Marcus. He answered on the first ring. Lillian, he said, his voice tight. I thought you were on a plane. I just landed, I lied. What is going on? Marcus, why are you asking about the house? Because, Marcus said, and I could hear him pacing in his office 4,000 miles away. Do you know who bought your house? Jordan and Elise Hargrove, I said. They are a young couple from Chicago. He works in finance. He does not just work in finance. Lillian, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Jordan Hargrove is the newly appointed Chief Financial Officer of Vantage Healthcare. I froze. Vantage Healthcare was a behemoth. They were the largest hospital network in the Southeast. But that was not the problem. The problem was that Vantage Healthcare was the primary anchor client for a small, boutique financial consulting firm called Red Crest Advisory. And Red Crest Advisory was the firm owned and operated by my father, Dale Moore. The irony hit me so hard, I actually had to lean against a brick wall to keep from laughing. It was a dark, hysterical laughter that bubbled up in my throat. My father, a man who prided himself on knowing everyone who mattered in Nashville, had spent the last 3 hours screaming at, threatening, and trespassing on the property of the man who effectively paid his mortgage. He had called the police on the one person in the city who held the power to bankrupt him with a single email. "Oh my God," I whispered. "It gets worse," Marcus continued. "Apparently, your father did not recognize him. He tried the 'do you know who I am' routine. He threatened to sue Jordan for emotional distress. And then, your sister tried to physically shove Jordan out of the hallway. How do you know all this?" I asked. "Because Jordan Hargrove called me 20 minutes ago," Marcus said. "He knows you used to work for us. He knows you are Dale's daughter. He wanted to know if Marrow Peak Analytics condones this kind of behavior. I told him absolutely not, that you had already transferred to Europe, and that the sale was legitimate. I managed to talk him down from dragging our company into it. But Lillian, he is going for blood with your father." "What did he do?" I asked. "He called Dale," Marcus said. "I do not know what was said, but the rumor mill is already churning. I just got a text from a friend at the Chamber of Commerce. They are saying Redcrest is about to lose the Vantage contract effective immediately." I closed my eyes. In the world of boutique consulting, losing your anchor client is a death sentence. It is not a stumble. It is a decapitation. My father's firm operated on thin margins. He relied on the Vantage retainer to cover his office rent, his country club dues, and the endless stream of bailouts he provided for Paige. "Lillian," Marcus said softer now, "I know things are complicated with your family, but this is professional suicide. If Dale loses that contract, he is finished." "I know," I said. "Okay," Marcus exhaled. "As long as you are clear of it, I just needed to make sure there was no liability on our end. Enjoy Amsterdam." He hung up. I stared at the phone. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. My father had spent his entire life preaching about the importance of networking, of knowing your place, of sucking up to power. And in one afternoon of unchecked entitlement, he had walked into the home of his biggest benefactor and treated him like a squatter. My phone vibrated again. It was not a text. It was a call. The caller ID said, "Dad." I had blocked him. I was sure I had blocked him. But then I remembered I had blocked his cell phone. This was coming from a landline. It was the office line at Redcrest Advisory. He was at the office, at 10 o'clock at night. That alone told me everything I needed to know about his desperation. I debated letting it go to voicemail. I had said my piece. I had sent the invoice. But curiosity is a powerful drug. I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear the voice of the man who had ordered me around for 3 decades now that the ground had crumbled beneath his feet. I answered, "Lillian." His voice was unrecognizable. The booming baritone, the confident, lecturing tone he used to dominate every room, it was gone. In its place was a thin, reedy sound, shaking with a terror so raw it almost felt intrusive to listen to. "Hello, Dad," I said. "Lillian, thank God," he gasped. "I tried your cell, but it would not go through. I thought the connection was bad." "I blocked you," I said. "You are calling from the office?" Yes, I am at the office," he stammered. He did not even acknowledge the block. He was too far gone for ego. "Lillian, we have a catastrophe. A complete catastrophe." "I know," I said. "Marcus told me." "Marcus," he sounded horrified. "Everyone knows already. News travels fast when you threaten to sue a CFO for entering his own house." I said, "I did not know," he cried out. It was a wail of genuine anguish. How was I supposed to know he was wearing a t-shirt? He had a baseball bat. He looked like a thug. "Lillian, he did not look like the man who signs the quarterly retainer. He looked like a homeowner defending his property," I corrected. "He called me." My father rushed on, his words tumbling over each other. 30 minutes ago, he called me on my private line, Lillian. He was ice cold. He said he cannot trust his financial future to a man who cannot even manage his own household. He said a man who raises a burglar has no business advising him on risk management. "He makes a valid point," I said. "He is pulling the contract. Lillian," my father screamed, the panic breaking through. He is reviewing the termination clause. If he leaves, everyone leaves. The Thompsons. The Heller Group. They all follow Vantage. I will be insolvent in 60 days. Do you understand? The firm will collapse. The house our house. Not yours, we will lose it. Your mother, she cannot handle that. That sounds incredibly stressful, I said, keeping my voice flat. I need you to fix it, he said. There it was. The reflex, the automatic assumption that I was the janitor of his life. Fix it, I asked. How exactly do you propose I fix the fact that you and Paige committed a felony against your biggest client? You have to write him a letter, my father said. He was speaking fast, plotting, scheming. You send an email to Jordan Hargrove. You copy me. You tell him it was all a miscommunication on your part. I stopped walking. I stood still in the middle of the sidewalk. Excuse me. You tell him you gave Paige permission, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You say you told her she could stay, but in the chaos of the move to Amsterdam, you forgot to inform the buyers. You say you gave her the key. You take the blame. Lillian, you say you were overwhelmed and scattered. If you say it was your mistake, he will forgive Paige. He will see it as a clerical error, not a break-in. He will calm down. He will keep the contract. I listened to his request. I let it roll around in my mind, examining it from every angle. He was asking me to destroy my professional reputation. He was asking me to lie to a senior executive, a man who ran in the same circles as my new bosses, and paint myself as incompetent, scattered, and negligent. He wanted me to tell the world that I was the kind of person who forgot she sold a house and accidentally caused a police raid. He wanted me to burn my credibility to keep his warm. You want me to lie, I said. It is a white lie, he pleaded. It hurts no one. You are in Europe. It does not matter what they think of you here. But I am here, Lillian. I have to live here. This is my legacy. This is 40 years of work. And what about my legacy? I asked. What about my integrity? Your integrity, he scoffed, a flash of his old arrogance returning for a split second. Your integrity does not pay for your mother's health insurance. Your integrity does not keep the lights on. Do not be selfish. Lillian, not now. This is life and death. Paige broke in, I said. You enabled her. You trespassed. You threatened him. Because of you, he shouted. Because you sold the house without telling us. You caused this. You set the dominoes in motion. You owe us this fix. I closed my eyes. I thought back to when I was 12 years old. I had entered the middle school science fair. I wanted to build a complex model of a hydroelectric dam. I needed supplies pumps, tubing, waterproof sealant. I had calculated the cost $45. I had asked my father for the money. He was sitting in his armchair, reading the Wall Street Journal. Paige was on the floor, playing with a new video game console that had cost $200. $45, he had said, looking over his reading glasses. That is a lot of capital for a school project. Lillian, what is the ROI? It is for a grade. Dad, I had said, I want to win the blue ribbon. If you want to win, you need to be resourceful, he had said, turning the page. I am not going to just hand you success. If I give you the money, you learn nothing. If you have to scrape and scrounge and maybe use cheaper materials, you learn innovation. But what if I cannot make it work? I had asked, tears stinging my eyes. What if it leaks? What if I fail? He had looked at me, his eyes cool and detached, and delivered the line that had haunted me for 2 decades. Then you fail, Lillian. And failure is a great teacher. It is the only way you learn resilience. I am doing this for your own good. I had built a terrible, leaky dam out of milk cartons and duct tape. It fell apart 10 minutes into the judging. I got a C. Paige got ice cream afterwards because she was bored waiting for me. Lillian. My father's voice brought me back to the present. He sounded small. Lillian, please, I am begging you. Write the letter. Save the firm. I looked at the canal water. Dark and deep. I had the power to save him. I could type out 3 paragraphs, hit send, and the pressure would release. He would keep his client. Paige would avoid legal charges. The cycle would continue. They would learn nothing. They would just learn that no matter how badly they screwed up, Lillian would fix it, or I could let gravity do its work. "Dad," I said softly. "Yes," he breathed. Hopeful. "You will do it." "Do you remember my science fair project?" I asked. "The hydroelectric dam." "What?" He sounded confused. "What are you talking about, Lillian? Focus." "I asked you for $45, I said, "and you told me no. You told me that if you bailed me out, I would never learn resilience." "Lillian, this is not the time for ancient history," he cried. "I am losing everything. You told me that failure is a great teacher." I said, my voice was steady, calm, and terrifyingly clear. "You said you were doing it for my own good." "Lillian, stop," he whimpered. "I am not going to write that letter." "Dad," I said, "I am not going to lie for you. I am not going to fix this." "You cannot do this to me," he sobbed. "I am your father." "Anto," I said, channeling every ounce of the cold, hard competence he had forced me to build. "I am being a good daughter. I am giving you the opportunity to learn resilience." "Lillian," he screamed, "failure is a great teacher." "Dad," I said, "so today, you learn your lesson." I hung up. I did not just hang up, I powered the phone down completely. I stood in the silence of the Amsterdam street. My heart was pounding, but not with fear, with power. I had not just cut the cord, I had burned the safety net. I walked toward the hotel, my steps echoing on the stones. I knew that back in Nashville, the collapse was beginning, the emails were flying, the contracts were being shredded, the house of cards my father had built on arrogance and my unpaid labor was coming down. And for the first time in my life, I was not going to be there to sweep up the debris. I thought blocking my family would buy me silence. I was naive. I forgot that in the 21st century, you do not need a direct line to someone to destroy them. You just need an audience. For 48 hours after I hung up on my father, I focused on my new life. I walked the canals of Amsterdam. I ate stroopwafel. I set up my desk at the new office. I told myself the radio silence from Tennessee meant they had finally accepted defeat. I imagined them licking their wounds, perhaps sitting in that prepaid hotel room, finally reflecting on their choices. I was wrong. They were not reflecting. They were rebranding. The first strike did not come from my parents. It came from my Aunt Linda, a woman who lived in Florida and communicated exclusively in inspirational quotes and guilt. I received a direct message from her on Facebook on Tuesday morning. "Lillian, I am praying for your soul. I cannot believe you would abandon your family in their time of need and flee the country. Your mother is devastated. Please call her." I frowned, staring at the screen. Abandon, flee. I opened my mother's profile. Since I had blocked her number, social media was her only megaphone, and she was using it. There was a post from 6 hours ago. It was a photo of her and Paige hugging. Paige looked tragic, staring off into the middle distance with red-rimmed eyes. The caption was a masterclass in vague, weaponized victimhood. "Our hearts are broken today. It is a special kind of pain when a child you raise turns their back on the family unit. We are dealing with a crisis homelessness, betrayal, and cruelty from someone we trusted. Please pray for my daughter Paige as she navigates this trauma. We will rebuild, even if we have to do it alone." The comments were a cesspool of sympathy. Oh my God. "Cynthia, what happened? Sending prayers." "Is this about Lillian? I heard she moved. How could anyone treat their sister like that? Karma will get her." My mother had liked every single comment. She was not deleting the ones mentioning my name. She was curating them. I felt a cold flush of anger, but I did not type a response. Engaging with a narcissist's smear campaign is like wrestling a pig in mud. You both get dirty, but the pig likes it. Then came the narrative shift from Paige. I started getting messages from cousins I had not spoken to in 5 years. "Hey Lil, is it true you sold the house while Paige was living in it and didn't tell her Lillian? Uncle Bob says you tricked Paige into going to the house so the police would arrest her. That is messed up." They were spinning a story where Paige was already a tenant, and I had pulled the rug out from under her. They were painting me as a sociopath who set a trap for her own sister. But the real escalation the moment the war moved from family drama to defamation came from Trent. I was sitting in my hotel room, analyzing the engagement on my mother's post like it was a data set, when a notification popped up from a burner account I used to monitor local Nashville trends. Trent was live on TikTok. The caption read, "Story time. My GF's psycho sister evicted us for clout." I clicked the link. Trent was sitting in what looked like the hotel room I had paid for. He was wearing a backwards hat and holding a Red Bull. The viewer count was climbing 300, 400 people. "Yo, what is up, guys?" Trent said, talking to his phone. "So, you are not going to believe what went down this weekend. We are literally homeless right now. My girl Paige. She is a mess. Her sister, Lillian, total corporate sellout. By the way, she literally sold her house from under us." He leaned into the camera, whispering like he was sharing a state secret. "So, get this, we had permission. Right, the parents. Lillian's mom and dad, they gave us the keys. They said, 'Go ahead, move in. It is family property.' And then Lillian waits until we have all our stuff inside, and she calls the cops on us. Like, who does that?" I watched, my hand hovering over the screen record button. I needed him to keep talking. I needed him to get arrogant. "Someone in the comments is asking if we had a lease," Trent said, reading the screen. "Bro, you do not need a lease with family. That is the point." Her dad told us, "Do not worry about the paperwork. Lillian is cool with it. Just get in there before she changes her mind." He literally said the paperwork did not matter because blood is thicker than water. I hit stop on the recording. I replayed the clip. Her dad told us, "Just get in there before she changes her mind." He literally said the paperwork did not matter. Trent, in his idiocy, had just handed me the smoking gun. He had admitted, on a public live stream, that they knew I might change my mind, implying they knew I had not actually given permission. He admitted they rushed in to establish occupancy before I could stop them. And he admitted my father was the architect of the invasion. Explicitly disregarding the legal ownership, I saved the video. I backed it up to the cloud. I backed it up to an external hard drive. But I did not stop there. The analyst in me knew that if there was smoke, there was fire. If they were this confident about moving in, they had probably taken steps to cement their claim before the break-in. I logged into the United States Postal Service portal. I still had access to the address monitoring for the Maplewood house because the final forwarding order had a grace period. I scrolled through the history. There it was. 5 days before the closing. 7 days before I left for Amsterdam, a change of address request had been filed. Name Paige Moore, from 1284 Oak Street, Apt 4B, to 4210 Maplewood Drive. She had not just crashed there, she had formally registered my house as her legal residence a week before she broke in. She had ordered a credit card terminal, a square reader sent to my house. This was not a desperate sister looking for a place to sleep. This was a hostile takeover. She was trying to establish residency so that if I tried to kick her out, she could claim tenant rights. In Tennessee, if you receive mail and have established residency, you have to be formally evicted through the courts, a process that takes months. They had planned to squat. They had planned to force me into a legal gridlock where I would have to pay thousands of dollars to remove them from my own home. The emergency key was just the entry method. The mail was the anchor. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. This was premeditated fraud. I opened a new browser tab. I searched for lawyers Nashville defamation civil litigation. I found a firm called Barrett Hale. Their website looked aggressive. I liked aggressive. I drafted an email to the senior partner. I attached the screenshots of my mother's post, the recording of Trent's live stream, and the PDF of the change of address confirmation. Subject retainer for cease and desist, defamation character. Dear Mr. Barrett, my name is Lillian Moore. I am currently the target of a coordinated smear campaign and attempted property fraud by the individuals listed below. I have evidence that they attempted to establish fraudulent residency in a home I had already sold, and are now publicly accusing me of criminal entrapment to damage my professional reputation. I want a cease and desist letter sent immediately. I want it delivered by courier to their place of employment and the hotel where they are currently staying. I hit send. I was ready to pay whatever hourly rate they demanded. My reputation was my career, and my career was my life. I would not let them burn it down to keep themselves warm. 2 hours later, my phone pinged with an email notification. It was not the lawyer, it was my father. From Dale Moore, Demorrid, Crest Advisory, com, to Lillian Moore, subject final warning. I opened it. Lillian, I have spoken to my attorney. You have 24 hours to retract your statements to Jordan Hargrove and issue a public apology to your sister. You will post it on your social media and tag the family. If you do not, I will be filing a lawsuit against you for fraudulent concealment. You sold a family asset that had implicit verbal agreements attached to it without notifying the beneficiaries us. You misled us into believing the house was available for Paige, causing us financial damages, moving costs, loss of her apartment. Furthermore, your actions constitute intentional infliction of emotional distress. We will seek maximum damages. Do not test me. Lillian, you think you are smart, but you do not know the law. Fix this, or I will make sure you are unemployable in the States. Dad, I read the email twice. He was bluffing. Or rather, he was using legal terms he had heard on television to try and scare me into submission. Implicit verbal agreements on a deeded property were nonsense. Beneficiaries of a house I bought with my own money was a fantasy, but the threat to my employability was real. If he filed a lawsuit, even a frivolous one, it would create a public record. It would show up in background checks. It would be a stain. He was counting on my fear of conflict. He was counting on the old Lillian, the one who would apologize just to make the yelling stop. He did not know he was emailing the new Lillian. I hit reply. Dad, I received your threat. I have just retained Barrett Hale in Nashville. I have forwarded them your email, along with Trent's live stream video where he admits you told them to enter the property despite knowing I might change my mind, and the USPS records showing Paige committed mail fraud by registering her address at a property she did not have a lease for. You want to sue me for fraud? Please do. I welcome the discovery process. I would love to subpoena your firm's financial records to see why you were so desperate to get Paige into my house for free. I would love to depose you under oath about the conversation you had with Jordan Hargrove, where you threatened a C-suite executive. If you file a lawsuit, I will countersue for defamation, abuse of process, and conspiracy to commit trespassing. And unlike you, I have the liquid capital to keep this in court for 5 years. You want to bring the law into this grate? So do I. Lillian, I sent it. My heart was hammering. But it was a good hammer. It was the rhythm of a fighter who had finally thrown a punch that connected. I waited. I expected a phone call. I expected a scream. Instead, silence. 10 minutes passed. 20. Then, a new email arrived. It was not from my father, and it was not from the lawyer I had just contacted. It was from a domain I recognized, Vantage Healthcare. Com. From Legal Department, Legal Vantage Healthcare. Com. To Lillian Moore, C.C. Jordan Hargrove. Subject inquiry regarding Case 4492B, Moore Vise, Hargrove Incident. My breath hitched. I opened the email. Ms. Moore, we are acting on behalf of Mr. Jordan Hargrove regarding the incident at his private residence on October 24th. We are currently preparing a submission to the district attorney regarding the trespassing and potential attempted burglary charges against Dale Moore, Paige Moore, and Trent Miller. Mr. Hargrove has informed us that you may be in possession of digital evidence, specifically communications or social media posts that demonstrate premeditation regarding the unauthorized entry. We understand there is a familial relationship, but given the severity of the threats made by Mr. Dale Moore against our CFO, we are treating this as a high-priority security matter. Would you be willing to provide a sworn affidavit or digital copies of any relevant evidence to assist in our filing? Regards, Jonathan S. Kraft, General Counsel, Vantage Healthcare. I stared at the screen. My father's bluff had not just failed, it had been preempted by a nuclear strike. Jordan Hargrove was not just pressing charges in the way neighbors do, he was using the full weight of $1 billion healthcare corporation's legal team to crush the man who had insulted him, and they were asking me, the daughter, the sister, to hand over the ammunition. If I said yes, I was sending my father to court, and possibly my sister to jail. I would be the key witness for the prosecution. I thought about the failure is a great teacher speech. I thought about the invoice they refused to pay. I thought about the smear campaign. I thought about the fake address change. I looked at the cursor blinking next to the reply button. This was not just a family spat anymore. This was a demolition, and I was holding the detonator. I hit reply to the email from Vantage Healthcare. I did not write a long emotional manifesto. I did not offer excuses. I simply typed, Craft. Please find attached the requested digital evidence, including a live stream recording where the unauthorized entrants admit to disregarding ownership and a USPS confirmation of fraudulent residency establishment. I am available for a deposition if necessary. I attached the files. I hit send. I had just crossed the Rubicon. By cooperating with Jordan Hargrove's legal team, I had ceased to be a family member and had officially become a witness for the prosecution. The response was immediate. A video conference was scheduled for the following morning afternoon for me to discuss pre-filing mediation. Jordan and Elise were not interested in a long, drawn-out court battle. They wanted security. They wanted a paper trail so thick and heavy that my family would never dare look in the direction of Maplewood Drive again. I logged into the call from a quiet meeting room in my new Amsterdam office. The screen split into 4 quadrants. In the top left was Jonathan Kraft, the general counsel for Vantage Healthcare. He looked like a shark in a $3,000 suit, sleek, predatory, and bored. In the top right were Jordan and Elise. They looked exhausted. Elise was pale, and Jordan had the tight jaw of a man who had not slept. In the bottom left, huddled around a laptop webcam that was positioned too low, giving an unflattering view of their chins, was the Moore family. My father, Dale, looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. His usually immaculate hair was disheveled. My mother sat next to him, her lips pursed in a thin, white line. Paige was there, too, staring sullenly at the table, refusing to look at the camera. Trent was absent, likely advised by someone with half a brain to stay far away. Ms. Moore, Mr. Kraft said, acknowledging me. Thank you for joining us from the Netherlands. I understand the time difference is significant. It is fine, I said. I am here to clarify the timeline of the sale. We do not need clarification, my father snapped. His voice was tinny through the laptop speakers. We need a little grace. This is a family dispute that has blown out of proportion. Mr. Moore, Kraft said, his voice cutting through the air like a scalpel. My client, Mr. Hargrove, is the CFO of the hospital network that keeps your consultancy firm alive. You threatened him with a lawsuit for entering his own home. You then allowed your daughter's boyfriend to publicly defame him on social media. This is not a family dispute. This is a liability assessment. We had a lease, Paige blurted out. She looked up, her eyes wide and manic. We had a written agreement, Trent wrote it up. My eyebrows shot up. A lease. You have a lease, Kraft asked, sounding amused. Please, show us. My father looked pained. He tried to put a hand on Paige's arm to stop her, but she shook him off. She held up a piece of paper to the camera. It was not a standard lease agreement. It was a piece of yellow legal pad paper. The handwriting was scrawled in blue ballpoint pen. Read it, Kraft commanded. Paige cleared her throat. I, Lillian Moore, hereby grant Paige Moore and Trent Miller full access to the property at 4210 Maplewood for an indefinite period, starting October 1st, in exchange for house-sitting services. And is it signed? Kraft asked. Yes. Paige pointed to a scribble at the bottom. Right here. I leaned closer to my screen. The signature looked like a child's interpretation of cursive. It looked nothing like my signature. Paige, I said, my voice echoing in the silence. Look at the date on that paper. She frowned, looking at the top of the page. October 1st. On October 1st, I said calmly. I was in Chicago for the final interview with Marrow Peak. I have flight records and hotel receipts to prove it. I was physically 300 miles away from that piece of paper. You signed it before you left, she lied. But her voice wavered. And, I continued, relentless. You listed the owner as Lillian Moore, but if you check the county records, I had already transferred the title into a holding trust for the sale process on September 28th. I technically did not own the house as an individual on October 1st. The contract is void because the grantor did not exist. That is a technicality, Trent's voice shouted from off-screen. He was in the room, hiding. It is fraud, Kraft corrected. Forging a signature on a retroactive lease to avoid trespassing charges is a felony. Ms. Moore, shall I add that to the file we are sending to the district attorney? Paige dropped the paper. She looked at our parents, waiting for them to save her. It was a misunderstanding, my mother interjected quickly. Her voice was high and brittle. The girls, they have always had these informal arrangements. Lillian is very difficult to pin down. She says one thing and does another. Paige honestly believed she had permission. Lillian simply failed to communicate the sale clearly. She was doing it again. She was rewriting history to make me the agent of chaos, and Paige the innocent victim of my silence. Stop, Jordan Hargrove said. It was the first time he had spoken. He leaned into the camera, his eyes locked on my father. Do not blame Lillian, Jordan said. This is not a communication error. I have seen the emails Lillian sent you. I saw the invoice. I saw the text logs. She was crystal clear. This is not a misunderstanding. Dale, this is a pattern. You people have a pathological inability to respect boundaries. Now see here, my father blustered, trying to summon his old authority. You cannot speak to me like that. I am a senior consultant in this town. You are a broke consultant, Kraft said. The room went dead silent. My father froze. His mouth hung open slightly. Excuse me, he whispered. Kraft looked down at a file on his desk. In preparing for this meeting, we ran a standard solvency check on Red Crest Advisory. It is standard procedure when a vendor threatens litigation against our executives. Kraft flipped a page. Mr. Moore, your firm is currently carrying $300,000 in short-term debt. You have missed your last 2 office lease payments. Your credit line is maxed out, and you have taken a personal loan against your own home equity. I stared at the screen. I knew my father lived above his means, but I had no idea the hole was this deep. This is irrelevant, my father shouted, his face turning a blotchy red. My finances are private. They become relevant when you try to steal a house, Kraft said coldly. We have a theory. Mr. Moore, we do not think you moved Paige into that house because she needed a place to stay. We think you moved her in because you could no longer afford to pay her rent at the apartment complex, and you promised her Lillian's house as a free alternative to keep her off your payroll. The air left the room. I looked at Paige. She was not looking at Kraft. She was looking at our father. Dad, she whispered, you said you just wanted me to be closer to home. You said the apartment was too urban. My father refused to look at her. He stared straight ahead, his jaw working. You told me the rent was taken care of, Paige said, her voice rising. I got an eviction notice at the old place. Dad, you told me it was a mistake. You told me to move to Lillian's because it was an upgrade. I was handling it, my father snapped at her. I just needed a few months of cash flow if you had just stayed in Lillian's house quietly. If Lillian hadn't gone nuclear, I would have stabilized the firm by January. It was a bridge. Paige, it was just a bridge. You used my house as a lifeboat, I said softly. It all made sense. The pressure, the entitlement, the desperation. My father wasn't just being a controlling patriarch. He was a drowning man using my property to keep his favorite child afloat because he was too proud to admit he was broke. So, Kraft said, closing the file, here's where we stand. We have proof of trespassing. We have proof of mail fraud. We have a forged lease. And we have a clear motive regarding financial distress. Please, my mother wept. Please do not ruin us. We cannot survive a lawsuit. We will lose everything. Then let's make a deal, Kraft said. He slid a document toward the camera. This is a binding settlement agreement. It has 3 conditions. 1. The Moore family, Dale, Cynthia, Paige, and Mr. Miller, agree to a lifetime restraining order against Jordan and Elise Hargrove. You will not come within 500 feet of them or the property at Maplewood Drive. My father nodded weakly. 2. You will issue a full, public retraction of all social media statements regarding Lillian Moore and Jordan Hargrove. You will admit that you entered the property without permission and that the accusations of entrapment were false. I cannot do that, Paige cried. Everyone will laugh at me. Would you prefer they visit you in prison? Kraft asked. Paige shut her mouth. And 3? Kraft continued. You will pay restitution for the locksmith, the cleaning, and the legal fees incurred by Mr. Hargrove today. The total is $4,500, payable within 30 days. We do not have that kind of money, Liquid, my father whispered. Then I suggest you sell the car you are sitting in. Kraft said. Lillian, my father said. He turned his face to the camera. His eyes were wet. He looked small. He looked like the ghost of the man I used to fear. Lillian, please, he said. You have the money. You just sold the house. You have the equity check. It is nothing to you. $4,000. You make that in a week now. No, I said. Help us, he begged. Just this once, to close it out. If we pay this, it goes away. If you pay this, we can start over. I will never ask you for anything again. I swear on your grandmother's grave. You swore on Grandma's grave that you would pay for my college, I said. I am still paying those loans. Dad. Lillian, do not be cruel, my mother sobbed. We are drowning. You are not drowning, I said. You are just finally being asked to swim. I cannot pay this, my father said, his voice cracking. Lillian, talk to him. Talk to Jordan. Tell him to waive the fee. He likes you. He respects you. Tell him we are good people who made a mistake. I looked at Jordan. He was watching me. He was waiting to see if I would fold. He was waiting to see if the sensible one would step in and fix the mess one last time. I looked back at my father. I am not the janitor anymore. Dad, I said, I do not clean up your spills. If you cannot pay, then I guess you will have to deal with the district attorney. I hear the courts in Tennessee are very efficient. You would send your sister to jail over $4,000. My mother screamed. No, I said. You would... Mr. Kraft? I said, turning my attention to the lawyer. I approve the terms. I am willing to sign an affidavit supporting the restraining order. As for the money, that is between you and the defendants. I have no financial interest in this matter. Understood, Kraft said. Mr. Moore, you have 24 hours to sign this agreement and wire the funds. If not, we file the criminal complaint on Monday morning. We need a mediation, my father said, clutching at straws. We need to meet in person. I cannot sign this over a video call. I need to review the language. Fine, Kraft sighed. My associate is in Nashville. We can set up a mediation at our satellite office for Monday morning. You bring the check. You sign the papers. If you do not show up, the police will be at your door by noon. We will be there, my father said, defeated. And Lillian, Kraft asked, will you be joining us remotely for the final signing? I will, I said. I want to see it finished. Good, Kraft said. Meeting adjourned. The screen went black. I sat back in my chair in the empty conference room. The silence of the office was heavy, but it was a different kind of silence than before. It was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of a demolition site after the charges have gone off, just before the dust settles. My father was broke. My sister was a squatter by necessity, not just entitlement. My mother was an enabler to the bitter end, and I was free. But as I packed up my laptop, I knew that Monday morning would not just be a signing. My father was a cornered animal, and cornered animals do not just surrender, they bite. He would have one last card to play at that mediation. I just had to make sure I was wearing armor when he played it. Monday morning arrived in Amsterdam with a steel gray sky and a persistent drizzle that blurred the view of the canal outside my office window. It was the kind of weather that made you want to curl up with a book, but I was sitting in a soundproof glass booth, adjusting the angle of my laptop camera for the final act of my life in Tennessee. The mediation was scheduled for 9 a.m, Nashville time. For me, it was late afternoon. I had a cup of tea, a stack of digital files, and a calmness that felt unnatural. My hands were not shaking. My heart was beating at a steady, resting pace. I felt like a surgeon scrubbing in for a procedure I had performed 1,000 times, even though this was the first time the patient on the table would be my own lineage. The screen flickered, and the participants joined the conference call one by one. First came Mr. Kraft, the General Counsel for Vantage Healthcare, looking as sharp and lethal as a fresh razor blade. Then came Jordan and Elise Hargrove. They were sitting in a conference room in Nashville, likely at Kraft's satellite office. Jordan looked stern, his arms crossed over his chest. Elise looked determined, a notepad open in front of her. Then, the final window opened. My family. They were squeezed around a mahogany table in what I recognized as the small meeting room at Red Crest Advisory. My father, Dale, sat in the center, wearing his best navy suit, though the knot of his tie was slightly askew. My mother, Cynthia, sat to his right, wearing oversized sunglasses indoors, presumably to hide the effects of 2 days of crying. Paige was on his left, slumped in her chair, picking at a loose thread on her sweater. Trent was next to her, looking like a teenager called to the principal's office, his jaw set in a defiant pout. "All parties are present," Mr. Kraft said, his voice smooth and devoid of warmth. "This session is being recorded for legal documentation. Let us begin." "We are here under protest," my father announced immediately. He tried to project his usual boardroom authority, but his voice lacked resonance. It sounded thin, like paper tearing. "We believe this entire situation could have been resolved with a phone call, rather than these bullying tactics. You had a phone call, Dale," Jordan Hargrove said, leaning toward the microphone. "You used it to threaten my career. That is why we are here." "I was emotional," my father countered, waving a hand dismissively. "I was protecting my child. Family comes first. I would expect a man of your standing to understand that." "I understand protecting my family," Jordan replied. "That is why I am getting a restraining order against yours." "Let's review the facts," Mr. Kraft interrupted, cutting off my father's sputtered response. "We are here to sign a settlement agreement regarding the trespassing incident at 4210 Maplewood Drive. The defendants Dale Moore, Cynthia Moore, Paige Moore, and Trent Miller claim there was a verbal agreement with the former owner, Lillian Moore, granting them tenancy." He looked at the camera lens, looking directly at me. "Ms. Moore," Kraft asked, "for the record, on the date of October 24th, or any date prior, did you grant your sister parents or their associates permission to enter or inhabit the property after the sale closing date?" The room went silent. On my screen, I saw 4 pairs of eyes lock onto me. My mother lowered her sunglasses. Paige stopped picking at her sweater. They looked at me with a mix of desperation and a silent plea. "Lie for us. Just this once. Save us." I took a sip of tea. I set the cup down. "No," I said. The word hung in the air, absolute and heavy. "Never," I added. "I explicitly told them the house was sold. I explicitly told them to return the key. I explicitly told them that entering the property would be trespassing." "She is lying," Paige shrieked. She nodded. "When I said I liked the guest room," she nodded. "That is a nonverbal agreement." "A nod is not a lease, Ms. Moore," Kraft said dryly. "And frankly, your own boyfriend has provided evidence that contradicts your claim of a misunderstanding." Kraft clicked a button, and the screen share feature activated. The video of Trent's live stream began to play. It was the clip I had sent. Trent's face filled the screen, smug and confident. "Her dad told us, just get in there before she changes her mind. He literally said the paperwork did not matter because blood is thicker than water." The audio was crisp. The paperwork did not matter. I watched my father's face as the words echoed in the room. He closed his eyes. He knew, in that moment, that his own arrogance had been recorded, packaged, and delivered as the weapon of his destruction. The video ended. The silence that followed was suffocating. That was taken out of context," Trent mumbled, his face turning a deep crimson. "The context seems quite clear," Kraft said. "You knew you had no legal right. You knew Lillian had not agreed. You decided to force entry based on the advice of Dale Moore, who believed he was above the law. We were just trying to help her," my father exploded, slamming his hand on the table. "My daughter was homeless. She had nowhere to go. We are parents. We saw a solution, and we took it." We were helping. Helping is not occupying, Dale, Jordan said. His voice was quiet, which made it more terrifying. You did not move her into a hotel. You did not move her into your house. You broke into mine. You did not help her. You stole from me. It was her sister's house, my mother cried out. It should have been in the family. But it wasn't, I said. They all turned to look at my square on the screen again. It was never family property, I said. It was my house, and you never respected that. You never respected me. We loved you. My mother wept. We did everything for you, and this is how you repay us by siding with strangers. I am not siding with strangers, I said. I am siding with the truth. You are twisted, Paige spat. You planned this. You lured me in. You wanted me to get arrested so you could feel superior. I did not lure you. Paige, I said. You have been planning to take that house for 6 months. What? Paige frowned. You are crazy. Mr. Kraft, I said. Please display Exhibit C. Kraft nodded. A new image appeared on the screen. It was a screenshot of a text message thread between Paige and me, dated 4 months ago, long before I had even interviewed for the Amsterdam job. I had been scrolling through my archives the night before and found it. It was the smoking gun I had forgotten I had. The text from Paige read when you move eventually. Because you know you will get bored. I am totally taking the back guest room. I already bought curtains for it. You will get used to it. Lol. I saw the color drain from Paige's face. You bought curtains for a house I was still living in, I said. You were not desperate, Paige. You were waiting. You saw my life as a waiting room for your life. This was not an emergency. This was a hostile takeover you had been fantasizing about for half a year. Paige stared at the screen. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. The narrative of the sudden crisis crumbled. She looked at Trent, but he looked away. She looked at our mother, who was busy wiping her eyes. Then, she looked at our father. You said it was okay, Paige whispered. Dale stiffened. Paige, be quiet. You said it was okay. She yelled, turning on him. You told me Lillian was just being difficult. You told me if I moved in, she would cave. You promised me, Dad. You said, trust me, I will handle Lillian. You promised me a house. I was trying to manage the situation, Dale shouted back. You lied, Paige screamed. Tears finally spilling over, not the fake tears of a victim, but the angry tears of a spoiled child realizing the candy store is closed. You always promise stuff you cannot do. You promised to pay my rent, and you didn't. You promised to fix my credit, and you didn't. And now you promised me a house, and I am going to get sued. I did my best, Dale roared. I have carried you your whole life. You carry me because you need me to be weak, so you can feel big. Paige screamed. The room went dead silent again. It was the truest thing anyone in my family had ever said. My father looked as if he had been slapped. He slumped back in his chair, the fight draining out of him. He looked at my mother, but she was looking at the table, refusing to meet his eyes. The united front was gone. They were just 4 people who had used each other until there was nothing left to use. Are we done with the family therapy session? Kraft asked, sounding bored. We have a schedule to keep. He pushed the papers across the table in Nashville towards the empty chairs where my family would have been sitting if they were there, but instead, he looked at the camera. The agreement is in your inbox. Mr. Moore, you will sign it digitally now. The wire transfer for $4,500 must be initiated within the hour. If not, the deal is off, and the police are on their way. My father pulled his phone out. His hands were shaking so badly he had to use 2 fingers to tap the screen. I watched him authorize the transfer. I knew that money was likely coming from a loan shark or a maxed-out credit card he had hidden from my mother. Signed, my father whispered. Paige Trent, Kraft asked. Signed, Paige muttered. Typing on her phone, Trent did the same. Good, Kraft said. The restraining order is now in effect. The retraction must be posted by noon. We will be monitoring. Can we go now? My mother asked, her voice trembling. I cannot be here anymore. Just one more thing, Jordan Hargrove said. My father looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. Maybe he thought Jordan was going to offer mercy. Maybe he thought the business relationship could be salvaged. "Dale," Jordan said, regarding the Redcrest advisory contract with Vantage Healthcare. "Jordan, please," my father said, his voice cracking. "I know we have had our differences, but the work has always been solid. Do not mix the personal with the professional. We have a 5-year history." "The work was adequate," Jordan said, "but the trust is gone. I cannot have a vendor who sues me. I cannot have a vendor who attempts to defraud me." The feed from the Nashville conference room cut out. Jordan, Elise, and Kraft were gone. For a moment, it was just me and my family on the screen. My father was sobbing. My mother was staring blankly at the wall. Paige was glaring at me with a hatred that would likely last a lifetime. "Are you happy?" Paige hissed. "You won. We are destroyed. Are you happy?" I looked at them. I looked at the people who had defined my worth by my utility for 34 years. I looked at the people who had taught me that love was a debt to be paid. "I am not happy," I said quietly, "and I am not sad. I am just free." I moved my mouse to the red end call button. "Lillian, wait," my father cried out, lifting his head. "Lillian, what are we going to do?" I did not answer. I clicked the button. The screen went black. I sat there in the glass booth, the silence of the office wrapped around me. I looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking, and a shaft of pale, watery sunlight was hitting the water of the canal, turning the gray into silver. I felt a physical sensation in my chest, like a tight band snapping. I took a deep breath, and the air went all the way to the bottom of my lungs for the first time in years. I picked up my phone. I went to my contacts. I found the group labeled ICE. In case of emergency, it listed Dale, Cynthia, and Paige. I hit edit. I hit delete. I confirmed the deletion. Then, I went to my phone settings. I changed my number. I had already set up the new one with the carrier, but I had kept the old one active just for this meeting. Now, it was time to switch. I swapped the SIM card. The old life was in a piece of plastic the size of a fingernail. I took it out, snapped it in half, and dropped it into the wastebasket under the desk. I stood up and put on my coat. I had a team meeting in 10 minutes. I had a presentation to give on predictive analytics. I had a dinner reservation at a small Indonesian restaurant I wanted to try. I walked out of the booth and into the open plan office. My new colleagues were there, typing, laughing, drinking coffee. They did not know me as the fixer. They did not know me as the doormat. They only knew me as Lillian Moore, the senior strategist from America. I was not a daughter. I was not a sister. I was just me. As I walked toward the elevator, I thought about what my father had said. "You killed us." He was wrong. I had not killed them. I had just stopped providing the life support they felt entitled to. I stepped into the elevator and watched the doors close, shutting out the past, shutting out the guilt, shutting out the noise. I did not break the family. I just finally stopped letting them break me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was a long journey from that driveway in Nashville to this quiet canal in Amsterdam, and I am grateful you stuck with me through the madness. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you sitting in a cafe in Paris, driving through the rain in Seattle, or maybe relaxing at home in Sydney? Drop your location in the comments below. I love seeing how far this story has traveled. And if you enjoyed watching me take my life back, please subscribe to the Lyra Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need a reminder that it is okay to choose yourself. Stay safe, stay strong, and remember boundaries are not a crime.